Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to view Splash, or as I would like to call it, Sploosh. It's been a while since watching a rom-com, so forgive me, people, if more than likely this doesn't exactly match what I've been reviewing lately. But also, I just kind of had a hankering for watching a movie that was, because I was going to watch, like, the Aquaman unaired pilot, and I was like, okay, how about I kind of pull away from that and kind of do something adjacent to it? And like I started to just be like, okay, like I've seen this movie, and like eventually it got to a point where I was like, you know what? How about I watch Splash because I've never fully seen this movie, as well as also like the combo of John Candy and Tom Hanks was kind of undeniable. Uh, I would want to go on and find out in my research, seemingly of Splash, that there was also a sequel to this movie called Splash 2, TOO2, kind of at a very low budget of a film, but because I looked into the trailer of it also, and it's like, okay, very weird sequel. But when looking at it, I was like, all right, like that exists. I can talk about that briefly. Uh, but so I went into this because I've seen stuff in the past like Lady in the Water, where we have the Paul Giamatti film where he is to be this kind of Mr. Fix It guy of his complex, and he has a pool nearby, and the pool ends up going on to have this lady come out of it, and so he ends up finding this lady. He ends up going on to find out that there is this certain thing about her. She is looking for a writer, a novelist, and it coincidentally has Paul Giamatti's character being connected to that. And there seems to be these monsters that are getting ever so close to try to get to her. And that was a really rather interesting film that at some point may be interesting to people to check out if they haven't before. I obviously would go on and say that I've seen a good chunk of Shape of Water, but that movie is such a slow molasses of a film that I'm just like, I don't know if I could be able to finish this one. Uh, but yeah, but like these could all really be kind of just smashing together some comparisons to a movie like this. Or we could also go in to stuff like uh The Man with the One Red Shoe, which is also to be a Tom Hanks movie, which is also to be a movie that I eventually want to go on and check out at some point because like it was one movie that I kind of saw the tail end of it once, and I was like, looks interesting. So with Splash, what is this about? Because I've already been talking for almost 4 minutes and haven't talked enough about this film. I was to go on and also when looking at this film, be reminded of uh, Inside the Actors Studio when Tom Hanks would go on and talk about how when he was in this underwater scene, they had this underwater apparatus where people could talk to one another. And so Ron Howard under the water, they as they had this apparatus was telling the actors like what he wanted from the scene, and then like he was kind of putting back on his oxygen so that way he could breathe. And like Tom had a good kick out of that just because of them just trying to film this movie underwater and trying to get something out of this. I don't know if I could probably ever go on and do an underwater movie. I think I would probably end up be freaking out about like how far I am away from air, as well as also yeah, I would probably just be like Like, yeah, I don't know if I could perfectly go on and think that I could like breathe underwater successfully with an apparatus of some kind if it's to be handed to me. But so we have a movie like Splash, and we come to find a guy named Alan who's played by Tom Hanks, who has seemingly just broke up with a woman because he cannot commit to her, because he feels that he cannot love, because he doesn't feel he has the organ inside of his body to give up an emotion like that. And in my opinion, personally, I feel that Alan's character will never go on and find the love of his life because he had found it when he was so young, his soulmate. And ever since then, like, it's just been like that he's not because it won't measure up to the girl that he met underwater, who was to go on and be there for him. So Alan goes on to want to try to find the woman that he had a lot of other people think that there's no possibility that she was there. And so Alan goes on to make his way back to the place that he was to be connected by in his youth, and that leads him to rediscovering his soulmate, the one he is to think was the one, because she saved his life. As this girl starts to swim away, Alan is like, "Hey, can I get your number?" "Yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen, Alan." And this girl also does not speak a lick of English. So Alan goes on to have to kind of forget about this girl, but he's infatuated with her. And they come back into miraculously finding one another again. And at this point, Alan's like, I'm not going to let this girl go. But once this girl is to go on and speak English as she is to watch television enough, and is to eventually come up with the name Madison between the two of them because her name is too hard to pronounce because it shatters TV screens. So Alan and Madison are to, while they're having conversation, it breaks down the fact that they can only spend this time together for seemingly 6 days. And Alan is like, well, why is that? Like, well, maybe it's an immigrant thing. Like, yeah, maybe she was just bizarrely just swimming um, overseas and she just landed in New York. Like, anything could happen. Like, so Alan is going on and rationally like trying to figure this out, and is to try anything he can to get this girl to stay with him. And he's like, well, hey, like, will get you working in my company keep you here? Will like you marrying me keep you here? And Madison tells him no. And he's just like, well, why? It's because Madison has this deep secret, which eventually Madison is trying to hide from Alan, that she, of course, is a mermaid. And then eventually come to find out there is a third person who is to want to go on and reveal this secret so that way he no longer looks like a crazed person, and that is to be Cornbleu. So Cornbleu, as at some point in the early parts of this movie they call him Cornbread. Uh, Cornbleu is to be this scientist who had gone on to be doing some underwater research and come to find this mermaid in the water as she was swimming. And so he dropped his camera, his underwater camera, and now has no proof that he saw this mermaid. So because he doesn't want to seem like a crazy person to his other science colleagues, Corn Blue wants to go on and push as much as possible. That he wants to find this girl again, and then he wants to go on and reveal her secret. And once he finally does go on and do that, then the science experiments start happening, kind of like E.T., where eventually E.T. is just kind of in his home, kind of minding his own business, and eventually the government finds out about him, and they start doing experiments, and like it seems that they're hurting him, and eventually they have to go on and just say like, well, hey, I think it's about time for him to go on home. So and Splash is kind of the same thing in a way, bizarrely. It's kind of connecting the two films. So we have Alan that because he loves Madison so much, he's willing to give up everything for her and realize that he could probably survive underwater with her, but he's just like, but I have family. Like, I have holidays. Like, I don't know if I can do this. And we have to question by the end of this, are we going to get a happy ending? Or get the ending we want? And for those of you that have technically seen this movie, I have to go on and kind of give some kind of cliffhanger here. But anyways, because I can't reveal all, but yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. There's some really good comedy. That wedding scene where Tom Hanks is an usher, I freaking like. I cackled. I laughed really good. It was so funny. Oh my god, that was good. The build up of Tom Hanks getting Alan's character asked about Victoria, and I'm just like, this is consistently happening, and it just gets to the point where like it builds to where he just finally lashes out, and it's freaking hilarious. Um, and then there's just kind of bits and pieces here where like it just feels like both Tom Hanks and John Candy are just having, I feel, a lot of fun here, but maybe it wasn't so. Maybe it was just like, no, like all this was really tough. But like it felt like the two of them had really good chemistry and a lot of fun together, even though it probably didn't make a lot of sense for how opposites they were for them to technically be brothers in this story. But regardless, uh, yeah, like I think that they were just perfect for this film. So, with that said, how did I feel about this movie? Obviously, it's definitely going to be a thumbs up film. Uh, I really think it's hard to have a fish out of water story, pretty much literally here, but I think it's kind of hard to have like a huge, overwhelmingly, amazingly great rating on this. Just because like fish out of water stories, they're so simplistic and like I would go on to say that Splash is a good film. I'll give it that. Um, for me, I feel that there was a lot of also biased on my grading of this opinion of this film because of kind of what Alan does as a job, where I felt that it was kind of familiar in some aspects to what I've gone on and done in my personal life, dealing with forklifts and dollies and all kinds of things. That environment is very familiar to me. So I was kind of very much like, okay, I can really connect to this character. and connect to his plights. And this movie may not connect to everybody. Some people may find Tom Hanks' character annoying. Um, I thought it was kind of funny. The Corn Blue character, who is to kind of be tortured throughout this film, and and yeah, like there's a lot of just kind of good bits of everybody in this film is kind of working well together, and it was a lot of fun. I really liked it. So with that said, where can you go on and see this movie? If there are avenues for you to rent this film, if you have the affordability to go on and decide to do that, then by all means, that could just be what you tend to do for a lot of these things. I'm to go on and give you an app through a mobile use for you to go on and be able to watch this movie for absolutely free through an app called Zelafonic. Zlivonic. I would recommend for those of you that are to go on and, of course, have the affordability, if you have a tablet or an iPad, probably the much better way to watch a film, in my opinion. But again, that's be my own personal opinion. Uh, but it's through the Google Play Store. You can find this app, I would believe, still hopefully, and be able to check this out. If there are any reasons for you to not go on and be able to find this said app, I may be able to go on and recommend other things for you, because I'm sure there are other things that I could probably have handfullingly find for people to check this movie still out for free. But anyways, I think it's about that time to just go into Splash and go into the whole breakdown and bits and pieces of this film, because I am to go on and to recommend people seeing it. It's the first time ever me fully seeing this film, because I've only seen bits and pieces of it, and like I felt that it was worth my time. I was like, cool, I finally got to 100% see this film, because I feel that a movie like this, I could probably go on and compare this to a number of other things. So that was probably my real true interest of this also. So that was the real reasoning for me wanting to check this movie out. So I think it's about that time to just say that it is. Spoiler time, spoiler time. It's about that time I'm going to spoil this movie. Let me know in the comments below what is to be your favorite fish out of water, literally, kind of film. Whether you are to probably like Shape of Water, or Lady in the Water, or if you were to go on and like horror mermaid movies, because there's actually a pretty decent amount of those. If you were to go on and like the Cher mermaid movie with Winona Ryder, and I have to question that. It's a Cher mermaid movie. Um, and there's also just kind of a plethora of just other things that just are to actually be of a mermaid in a story. Uh, and there's like the one where I've seen it where like the mermaid girl is in the tub, and then like the two girls are there, and like yeah, like I've seen that. I've seen bits and pieces of it. I haven't seen the whole thing. Uh, but if anything, I'm probably going to be using a load of tags for this one specifically. So we'll see what sticks. Probably nothing, because that's always to be the nothing works in YouTube. To try and retroactively think of anything is to actually be of any kind of real tying into this platform. That's the sad thing about it. You can put like 30 different names of 30 different movies in this thing, and none of them will ping. But if anything, with this, I wanted to check this movie out anyways. This fun. It's been a while since I've done a rom com movie, and also it's just kind of, it was nice. I enjoyed it. So let's go on. Let's pause this here. Get on my cast list wherever I insist to help me go on and rattle this movie off. So without a doubt, I will go on and probably not exactly note for note or beat for beat know everything that's going on here, but or remember everything. But logically, I'll try to go on and figure out a way to break this down as squeakingly best I can, because I'm sure I'm going to be so far tempted to go into all the nitty gritty details. So with that said, let's pause here. Let's whip that out, because I think it's about that time. All right, we have to start off this film 20 years ago at Cape Cod. So the beginning of this tale has this kind of cruise or ferry like tour, and so we go on to find young Freddy, and he is to drop change on the ground, and he looks up women's skirts. Coming to find out, Freddy will not only do this as a child, but then he'll go on and do this even in adulthood. And so while Freddy continues to go on and do this, at some point his mother notices him doing this, grabs him, and so the mother wants the father to go on and talk to Freddy, as of course Alan is off to the side here, and is noticing something in the water. We go on to then have Alan jump in the water after what he is to have gone on and seen. And all of a sudden, everybody's running like crazy to see what is going on with the chaos. People are shouting. Alan's mother is screaming, "Alan!" And so Alan is making his way into the water, and we have to assume that Alan has never gone on to learn how to swim, but it seems that there is to be a saving grace here, which is to be the mermaid that arrives, and we all of a sudden have a sailor that chucks out a lifesaver or life preserver, and then jumps into the water after him to grab him and pull him out of the water and rescue him. To where, of course, Alan's father turns to this sailor and thanks him, and is to ask Alan why he decided to jump off the way he did. And so we go on to see a young Madison who is in tears and is to see the ferry just kind of pass her by, or the the cruise here pass her by, and so she swims off. And so now we have 20 years later, New York City this morning. So they probably should have just said New York City 20 years later. That would have made a lot more sense. So because we have to just assume that there's just like, okay, this is more recent time. So the next thing we see here is Alan is a much more older man, more Tom Hanksish, and so he's going on and dealing with Mr. Micolo. I'm probably saying that incorrectly. And this guy is shouting about, "Where's my cherries? Where's my cherries?" And Alan's like, "Okay, I'll get you your cherries. Like, I'll figure it out." So we go on to come to find that uh, that a guy named Augie had delivered these cherries, but sadly the cherries are not to go on and be in a good shape. It seems that some of them have, I think, bits of mold or some kind of slime on them. And yeah, like that can obviously happen. Like if you have a truck that ends up getting either too hot or too cold, that can go on and affect like specifically stuff like produce. And a lot of times, like when you end up getting a truck and it deals with any number of stuff that like it depends on, like, say for example, like even stuff like flowers and trees and stuff, like, yeah, if you have a day where it rains or if you have a day where uh snow, what, yeah, like any number of nature like things come into play of affecting what kind of produce and stuff you get. So come to find out, Augie had played cards with Freddy the night before, and that Augie had gone on to won this hand and was trying to get rid of these cherries and was forcing them on Freddy, hoping that he'll do something with them. And so, as we of course then have Freddy arrive, and he smashes in to these crates, and he's like, "Hey, what are these crates doing here?" And he's like, "Hey, I'm fine, also." For those of you that give a so as Freddy is to arrive, then Alan is to kind of chase after his brother to figure out what is going on. And so it seems that Freddy is to be more concerned of anything that Alan is saying, by more so Freddy having his letter that had been printed in the Penthouse magazine. And so he's going on and handing out all these copies to all the guys. So because Freddy not going on and giving us what is going on with Alan, Alan is then going on to be forced to talk to, of course, uh, McCauley here, or McCauley here, um, McCauley here, Michelow, Michelow. I have no idea. Um, and he tells him like, "Hey, how about I go on and I give you bananas for a deal?" And he's like, "All right, I'll take it." So after they deal with that nonsense, we then go on and have both Ellen and both Freddy, and they make their way into their office. So they meet up with the secretary called Mrs. Stimler, who, come to find out, had recently got hit by lightning. It seems like John Candy ends up finding a bunch of movies where people are getting hit by lightning. There's like The Great Outdoors, the Dan Aykroyd John Candy movie, where somebody ended up getting hit by lightning multiple times and has this like white strike in their hair. Uh, so Alan's secretaries to go on and tell him that there seems to be some messages, and so Alan is to go on and say like, "Okay, what are the messages?" And the secretary goes on and tells them, "Oh yeah, your father called. He wants you to call him back." And Alan's like, "Well, that's going to be a little tough because he died 5 years ago." And like, remember, he's passed away. And so the secretary goes on and asks Alan, it's like, "Well, hey, should I get him on the phone for you?" And Alan's like, "No, no, no. Like, I'll take care of it. Just you get back to work and I'll just go into my office." So Freddy turns to Alan, it's like, "What is with her?" And he goes on to explain that she had gotten hit by lightning, and he's like, "Geez, like, all right." So like Freddy starts laughing, and Alan's like, "It's not funny." And so Alan states like, "Well, hey, we're gonna just continue to allow her do things around the office." And Freddy's like, "Well, what? Jumpstart a car?" So Alan eventually is to go on of like, "Freddy, like, what are you here for? Like, why have you made your presence here today? Because it's probably a very rarefied air." So Freddy goes on to explain that he had met with a guy named Mr. Byright, who it seems is to have a franchise of certain stores that they can kind of make business with. And we have Alan's that's like, oh, like, so, like, how many stores are we gonna work with him with? And Freddy's like, oh no, it's a whole chain. And so he's like, hey, don't joke with me. And Freddy's like, no, I'm not joking with you. It's like, all right, like, that's very big business. This is great. So Freddy used to say, it's like, well, like, there is a bit of a snag because I had gone on and found out that he has a bit of military experience. I lied that you, of course, had been in the army in Nam. So yeah, so if anything, like, the two of you are gonna kind of relate on the fact that you have supposedly military experience, and eventually when the two of them meet, like, there's gonna kind of be a quick brush off that kind of occurs here. So Freddy goes on to explain to Alan that uh, Mr. Byright is to go on and just kind of check out the operations. And Alan is like, man, I have nothing about chaos about going on right now. Like, if anything, like, Augie had brought me some slimy cherries and, like, from upstate. It's like, so, and also he's mentioning that a friend of his named Jerry is getting married tomorrow, and that he needs to get his tuxedo, and so on and so forth. So, uh, let's push here. So we have Alan then getting a phone call. It ends up being a phone call from a woman named Victoria. Through the phone, Victoria is telling Alan that she's moving out, and Freddy is to go on and take the phone also and just kind of hear this whole conversation, and at some point add his 2 cents in. So Alan is going on and being told over the phone that Victoria is moving out, and he is to, of course, go on and try to, like, beg and plead for Victoria to not to leave. But come to find out, as soon as Alan is to make his way back home, he realizes that Victoria is no longer there. So Alan is to, of course, be rather heartbroken by this. So the next thing we see here is the wedding. And so Freddy is to, of course, go on and make his way to the wedding, and he immediately sees a bunch of women in a crowd together. Guess what he does? Drops the change and then takes a peek up at the skirts. So Alan grabs Freddy and like, hey man, like, we have a wedding to go to, and like, you're embarrassing. Like, it was fine when you were 10, but like, come on, man. Like, and Freddy's like, well, hey, like, it worked then. Like, it's working now, so I'm sticking with it. So we go on to both Alan and Freddy being ushers at this wedding, as Alan had been told by Jerry, like, I think the following day, like, what time he needs to be there, and so on and so forth. They talked briefly about it. So as people are to go on and pass, Alan tells everybody to sit anywhere but the first 3 rows. So as people pass one by one, there's a person that goes on and asks um, Alan about, like, oh, hey, where's Victoria? And Alan's like, oh, well, she's sick. Yeah, she just couldn't make it. And so, um, and so Alan, because this is coming up, he's to, of course, go on and like, why didn't I love her, Freddie? Like, why do I have this organ that just won't produce like this love and this and that? So, and then the next person comes in and be like, oh, Alan, where is Victoria? And he's like, oh, well, yeah, she has the flu. She has really bad flu. She's very sick. Oh, okay, well, give it my best. And so they leave. So, and then Alan, like under his breath, is like, yeah, give her my love. Yeah, my bet. So, uh, like I can't even give her my own love. So we go on to then have another guy. Where's that pretty lady of yours? And Alan's like, well, she's not coming. Okay. So the very next person, here is where Alan explodes. And this is freaking hilarious. So we have a guy who, of course, is Ron Howard's brother in 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 real life. This actor. So this actor goes on. He turns Alan like, "Oh, hey, Alan," and we then finally get Alan to break it. Like, she left me. My life's in shells. Okay, like anywhere but the first 3 rows. I loved that. My life's in shambles. Okay, she left me. Anything but the first 3 rows. That's the news. You want the weather? And then Freddie's like, you should really lighten up on the guy. That's the bride's brother. It's like, oh, whatever. So the next thing you see them doing after the wedding, as they're getting sloshed, they're getting hammered, they're getting drunk. And so Alan has gone on to get so drunk that he is now laying on the bar table. He's just laying on it because of how drunk he is. And then he realizes he's on the bar table, so he tries to get off. So, and he has pretzels in his face. So, the two of them are going on and talking here, and at some point, we have Alan that is to notice this couple, and because Freddie has gone on to try to get these 2 other women to try to get some dates out of this. So Alan is going on and noticing these 2 people talking as if they've just met. The one woman is being asked about her earrings, like, oh yeah, I just got them from my grandmother's. And so as Alan is to consistently go on and just sort of barge in the conversation to like kind of why do we just go no. Do I expect too much out of life? Uh and like he freaking bats the girl and she drops her drink. So Alan ends up apologizing. He's very drunk, and eventually they leave. The guy wants the 2 of them to just kind of go back to his place because, of course, he does. So Alan's like, I don't ask to be famous. I don't ask to be rich. I don't ask to play center field in the New York Yankees or anything. I just want to meet a woman. I just want to meet a woman. I want to fall in love and I want to get married. cliche of everybody. Everybody wants that. Everybody wants the common picket fence life. And I want to have kids. And I want to see them play a tooth or flute in school. Something I don't know. In the school play. Once I want to see him play a role in his, I don't know, something in a school play. So, is that too much? I'm just kidding myself. It's never gonna happen. I'm going to grow old and grow lonely and die, and I'll be surrounded by a bunch of rotten fruit. So, we have getting on the lighter side. That whole scene kind of reminds me of also like the Nicolas Cage Family Man, where he goes on to be tempted to want to get back with the woman he obviously loves. But his glimpse is over, and he wakes up the next day realizing that he has to go on and save his business during Christmas Day. And he states that he's like, all right, like I'll do whatever I have to do to get the right bit of information, and then I'm gonna go skiing alone, completely and utterly alone. And all I'm gonna do that because that's my life, and there's nothing I can do to change that. Man, I'm getting really sad here. I'm getting bleak here. Let's turn this around though. So Freddy goes on and is to mingle with these two women, hoping that that'll turn Alan around here, and like, hey, this is my brother. Hey, come on, Alan, come over here and kind of meet with these two women. And as Alan is just kind of like, and so Freddy's like, all right, well, like I'll come over and kind of work him up over to the table, but we have Freddy that says to Alan, it's like, well, hey, we're making our way to Rio, and we have Alan that says to Freddy, it's like, you know what, I'm gonna go to Cape Cod, and Freddy's like, seriously, like, you want to go to Cape Cod? It's like, do you have enough money to go to Cape Cod? And Alan's like, well, yeah. And so as Alan walks off, Freddy's like, well, can you give me some? So Alan gets into a taxi and is asked for Cape Cod. And the taxi driver stops and it's like, you know, that's 300 miles, right? And also, like, hey, man, like, watch the glass because Tom Hanks' character immediately bashes his head right in the glass. And Alan's like, well, yeah, that's what I usually enjoy is smashing the glass with my face. And so Alan is completely fine with paying how much he needs to get this driver to get him to Cape Cod. And so the next thing he sees is Cornblue. And Cornblue has a bunch of guys with these crates that obviously they're stupid and they can't read. Cornblue goes on and is upset with them because he realizes that they have upside down a box that says right side up. And so basically this box is upside down to the point where if they were to open the box, it would be completely backwards. So Cornblue has to go on and tell them that. So as Cornblue is dealing with this, Alan makes his way to these people, and considering they have a boat, he goes on and asks them, it's like, oh, hey, morning. Like, would it be possible if I can go on and kind of borrow your boat to make my way to Cape Cod? And Cornblue goes on and tells Alan here, is like, well, we're not going that way. As well as also the further and further the two of them are talking here, we have Cornblue that has some suspicions of Alan for how he's bizarrely wearing a tuxedo, and assuming that Alan is working for a guy named Dr. Roberts, which we'll see kind of later on in the film, from Chicago. And the further and further the two of them are to argue here, we have one of the men that Cornblue is with is to go on and tell Alan there's a guy down by the beach who can go on and help him get to the island. And Alan ends up asking, hey, what's the name? It's like, well, the guy or the island? And he's like, all right, I'll just find it myself. So Alan goes on to find a guy named Fat Jack, and so he has this boat. We go on to have Alan explain to Fat Jack that he's a bit afraid of being in the water because he can't actually swim. So Fat Jack starts to heavily rock the boat, and Alan starts freaking out. And then he's also just like, "Well, hey, some water is getting in the boat," so he starts freaking out. So what happens then after that is all of a sudden the motor is to stop working, and Fat Jack is to go on and realize, like, oh yeah, I'll just grab this ball peen hammer and smack this motor, and that'll just get it to work, right? Yeah. So Fat Jack goes on to try to get this motor to work, and it doesn't. And so Fat Jack is like, well, hey, I can go on and get my other boat. I just have to jump out of the water, swim my way back to get the other boat, and then we'll be fine. So now we just have Alan that is by himself on this boat. And we now have Cornblue, who is getting in his scuba diving gear, and one of the guys ends up calling him cornbread or corned beef, and he corrects him that it's pronounced corn bluth, so it's corn bluth. So they end up asking him what exactly he's looking for down there, as if he's looking for buried treasure, and the guy says in return, then it's like, well, it's none of your goddamn business what I'm looking for. And so, as Corn Bluth goes on to make his way off the boat, it seems that the guys are going on and tampering with his air hose, saying that they're going to pee in it, or at some point also they are to kind of have a chair on it, and then he, of course, Cornbluth gets upset. He's like, "Hey, this is my air hose, and you have your chair on it." But that happens a little later in the film. So Alan, because he's gone on to wait quite a bit of time here, he decides to go on and just take a ball peen hammer himself to this motor, hoping that it's going to work, and it doesn't. But in the proximity of him going on and doing this, he ends up accidentally falling in the water. And the motor does start, but the boat is now circling around him. And we, of course, get to a point where the boat is coming near where exactly Alan is and is going to hit him on the head. So that's what transpires here. Alan gets hit on the head, his wallet comes falling out of his pocket, and he comes to find himself ashore, alive, estranged by all this, and then comes to find out a mystery woman that is to be in the brush aside him is like full in the buff without any much of anything to try to actually be revealed, because this woman has so much hair, like almost Rapunzel style, that it's like, yeah, uh, you would have to go on and just kind of pause it just right to see Tom Cruise's weenus. If you were to go on and remember the movie Scream, you probably know where that thing comes from. Tom Cruise, all the right moves. If you pause it just right, you just see, yeah, that scene. But if anything, we have Alan that goes on and asks this girl if she indeed saved him, and asks if she also speaks English. We of course get the girl who comes ever so close to Alan, and I think the two of them kiss, and then she jumps into the water and swims off. And he's like, just tell me who you are. Can I get your number? Can I call you sometime? So he also does not want the girl to go further and further into the water because, of course, he can't swim. And he just wants to talk to her. And he's like, man, why didn't I learn how to swim? So the girl goes back into the water as this mermaid, and she finds Alan's wallet and starts thumbing through it, and then swims off. Finding Kornbluth in his scuba diving gear, and he, of course, ends up getting freaked out by this visual. He drops his camera, and he is to desperately plead that this girl just stops dead in her tracks because he wants to go and grab his camera and take pictures of her. By the time that happens, she swims away. Of course she does. Kornbluth goes on with a scientist of his to have a history of, in his youth, being told these tales of mermaids, and Kornbluth was to go on and finally have proof of one existing, and so he wanted to go on and logically uh have an answer for the question, is there to be mermaids in existence? So Madison, because I don't want to go on and call her Mysterious Girl until she has a name in this film, so I'll call her Madison because that's her actual name in this film. Madison goes on to swim to make her way to this I would assume uh sunken pirate ship. It looks kind of with its visuals. And Madison goes on to find these maps as she realizes that Alan's located upon New York. And so Madison has this map of New York, and it's like, aha. So the next thing we see here is that Alan has made his way back to his produce facility, and he now has a bandage over his head because he probably has a concussion or any number of things because of that bat on from the boat. So we now have Alan that goes on to meet with Mrs. Stimler, who is now wearing a bra on the outside of her clothes, and immediately we go on to, of course, have Alan, who's looking down at the bra and feels like he wants to say something, but he's just like, I don't think it's appropriate. And then also, yeah, like, uh, this is a harassment lawsuit probably waiting to happen. And so he just kind of ignores it. He notices it, but he ignores it. So, and it's also funny how she goes on and asks Alan if he's been hit by lightning, and he's like, "No, a boat hit me." So we are now at the Statue of Liberty here, and we have this guide who's going on and doing this tour, and as he used to go on and spout this thing about how uh, welcome to the Statue of Liberty. The statue is a gift from French citizens. It has come to symbolize hope for naked women everywhere. As what? And then we have the guy who's like, Barcy balls or Boxy balls. And so all of a sudden, everybody is to rush because we see Madison in her glory. And everybody is rushing to try and take a picture with her. As one of the guys is like, take a picture with me, with her. Come on. The guys who are going on and doing some surveillance watching through these huge uh, observer things are going on and twisting to see her. And eventually the cops get involved. The cops grab the girl and they go on to find some shirt for her to go on and wear as they are now on this police escort boat vehicle. Um, Let me say that again. The police officers are on this boat and they're making their way on shore. Yeah. So they end up asking her name, but they realize that she doesn't speak English, and they realize that the thing that she carried was this wallet to try to figure out who can go on and know her. And so we now have to realize that this is the day where Mr. Byright is making his way to uh, this produce factory. So and Freddy goes on and meets with Byright before he does kind of some practice things. So while that's going on, Alan is kind of working with the business and goes on to talk to Alan. And eventually, Byright goes on and talks to Alan like, well, hey, yeah, uh, yeah, it seems that you're wearing that bandage. Is it because of what happened to you in Vietnam? And Alan's like, what? And then Freddy's like, hey man, like remember, like you had that incident in Vietnam. Remember, I told you about it yesterday. Like, so, uh, yeah, that grenade, still bothering you. You're wearing a bandage. So one of the workers ends up getting this phone call that is for Alan. And so Alan goes on to answer the phone call, and he realizes that he's forced to make his way to this police station to get this girl, because wallet in hand. So Alan goes on to run off, and Byright is asking Freddy, it's like, well, hey, why is he running off like that? And Freddy's like, yeah, like that's the weirdest thing. Every time he ends up getting a phone call, he just runs off the way he does. Like it must have something to do with just his injury. So I guess to kind of quickly explain away um, what's going on here for this character. So in an almost comedic like fashion. So the next thing we see is Alan making his way to the police station, and as he's like running and fixing his hair and stuff like that to just kind of look presentable. So the police officer goes on and points the girl out as she is sitting with all these other people, and the two of them kiss, and the officer ends up saying to Alan, it's like, well, uh, like I take you know this girl, and Alan turns to the officer, is like, well, yeah, I do. It's like, well, do you know who she is? And he's like, I don't know, I have no clue. And the officer's like, of course you don't. So Alan and both Madison, they walk off. They make their way to his place, and the very first thing is we have this revolving door where Madison doesn't know like how to get out of it. She keeps spinning with it, to where then Allison is to go on like, oh yeah, like there's something wrong with this door. Hey, Timmy, you should fix this door. That's the door guy. So Allison and Madison make their way to the elevator. They're locking lips all the way there. They make their way to his place, and we have Alan, who consistently within this movie is like zippity doo dah, zippity yay. That's his weird, goofy, like I'm happy song. I guess it seems. I guess maybe that was the only song that he could probably also sing that maybe wasn't copyrighted for whatever goofy reason. I don't know. Because I guess through any movie show, we always have to worry about like a weird, goofy copyright of things. Um, and like this song kind of feels very dated, but whatever, it is what it is. So we have Alan that brings in this massive tray of just every kind of food possible because he has no idea what this girl will actually want or like or whatever. And he brings like fruity pebbles, pancakes, waffles, everything. So and we have Madison and Alan that kind of kiss again. To where, of course, here's where Alan is to say, it's like, well, hey, I need to go to work. Um, and so he has her watch the uh, TV because he has to be at work by 3 o'clock. But then he is to go on and rush back into Madison's arms to just be like, well, you know, I could probably go at 4 o'clock instead. So Freddy is going on and dealing with something at the produce facility, and we have Alan coming in with his zippity doo dah, zippity yay, blah blah blah, and he's just so happy. What a wonderful day that he's just yeah. So even to the point where both Freddy and both Alan are both dancing, it's really fun. So and he says how he's a rotten lead, and so Freddie is to state to Alan how they had gotten the buy right contract ready, and Alan is kind of leaving Freddie in charge with all of this, and and Freddie is also telling Alan about the lawyer meeting, and then it's gonna have to be at 8 o'clock. And Alan's like, 8 o'clock? Like, that's a little late for me. And so Alan's like, well, hey, I'm just gonna go upstairs and take a nap and and wake me up when it's time to go home. So yeah, like wow, like it's gotta be rough to own a company, right? So back with Madison, she's going on and watching TV and she's seeing a commercial about Bloomingdale's. So she heads out of the building in head to toe with suit because that's all she knows um, of what really Alan has. But also, it kind of like it makes for a very much fish out of water story for her wearing a suit like this out and about the way she does. So Madison meets with the doorman and she says the word Bloomingdale's, and he's like, all right, I know exactly where you want to go. So the doorman uh, cues a taxi, and Madison makes her way to Bloomingdale's. So she's going through all the women, putting blush in all kinds of cosmetics, and I actually like the way that this place is set up is kind of very cool looking in my opinion because I've seen so many effing retail stores. Like it's kind of interesting to see how they're all set up, and I actually liked how this is bizarrely set up because of my longevity experience in retail. Like I have to weirdly talk about how interesting stores look now at this point in my life. What kind of stupidity is that? I don't know. It's just my weird, goofy, like I like how places are set up. Um, but anyways, so Madison goes on to start looking at a certain number of dresses. This this person that goes on to sell Madison this bit of clothes gets, I think, way too honest. Uh, but I guess also I like whatever they can do to just kind of sell them this clothes. But the salesman goes on and is talking with Madison here and is to state how her Annie Hall outfit that she's wearing is kind of outdated. If you guys don't know, there I think was like Diane Keaton, who I think had gone on to wear a uh, like a neck or a neck down just kind of suit, and that had kind of made a lot of impression on people. And so I think a lot of people can go on it and kind of connect to that and Annie Hall and all kinds of things to just kind of see that women are just trying to stand out in a way, which is to look more masculine, and all for it. Cool for them. Like yeah, like women should be able to wear whatever, just like dudes. Um, whatever. Anyways, this is such a God. I'm getting dumber by the minute. I apologize. So as Madison makes her way through certain pieces of clothing, we go on to have the salesman state to Madison, yeah, I definitely would not go on to be able to fit in a dress like this, but my daughter would, and that's because she's anorexic. I'm like, God dang, like a little bit too much there. I was like, wow. Um, so they end up boxing up her items, and like I would never think that you would go on and actually box up an item. I think you would just put them in a bag. Um, but yeah, but they bizarrely give her all these like colored boxes here. In my opinion, like you would never actually see in a retail store boxes like that are all different colors. They would all be like white or black. Or so this isn't like legitimate. It's just kind of being very visually colorful here. Um, but anyways, we have Madison who is watching uh, a bunch of TVs here because she's in this store that has this electronics section. So she's going on and watching this thing, and she's seeing a commercial for Crazy Eddie with his greatest clearance sale ever. And he's slashing prices, and he's being very overly exaggerated here. And like, this is the obvious scheme of like thinking that if this guy has to be very like out there and very uh yeah, I'm slashing prices, like as if like he's giving everything away. Like that is to seemingly be the commercial scheme here to get people's interest, and then also being very loud and very very flashy and whatever. Yeah. So we have Alan making his way back to his apartment to realize that Madison is not there. He had flowers in his hand, and immediately, when he leaves his apartment, he still has the flowers, and he throws it on this chair and makes his way into the elevator. Going back to the doorman to ask if he had gone on to see the blonde from once before, and the guy had told her where she had gone. So there seemingly had been some hours passing here, and it seems that this store is about to close. The store manager here is to want to advise Miss, we're getting ready to close. Oftentimes for a store, yeah, like there is like a 5 to 10 minute like leeway to kind of like, hey, like if you're want to go on and you want to buy something, like come on, or you should probably get ready to kind of leave. And so the one guy turns to the manager and saying like, she's been there for 6 hours. So it's like, holy so Madison at a point is going on and she's watching Sweating to the Oldies. She's watching um God, I'm trying to think of his name because I know he passed away recently. uh I want to say it's like Richie, but that's not the name. Um, I'm probably gonna think about it way later, and it's not gonna matter now. Regardless, Sweating to the Oldies, you could probably figure out who that is. Uh, so we have Madison that is going on, and she's doing all these exercises, and the manager is to almost insist that she stop doing that, and but then he just goes right back to the counter and he's like, yeah, like she's exercising, we'll give her a minute. So Alan makes his way into Bloomingdale's, and a security guard is going on and telling Alan, hey, we're closing. And he's like, just give me 3 minutes, you can time me, I will be back. So Alan goes from store to store, finds, then Madison meets up with her. Oh, thank God. And here's where the manager asks Alan, it's like, well, hey, do you know this woman? And he says, yeah, but don't ask me what her name is. So we have the manager that goes on like, well, we've been trying to tell her it's closing time, but it doesn't seem that she understands. And Alan states to the manager, it's like, well, that's because she doesn't speak English. And so all of a sudden, then Allison starts speaking English, and then it's like, so all of a sudden, we then have Alan that grabs Madison. It's like, well, what is your name? And we have Madison that states like, well, it's really hard to pronounce it in English. And so she starts going on and doing it, and Alan holds his ears, TVs bust all over the place, and after that happens, Alan turns to the guys like, how about the Knicks? And then they leave. So Alan ends up asking Madison why is it that she hadn't gone on to say anything now. And she's like, well, I didn't know English. Like I watched the televisions and that's how I learned it. And he's like, all right, great, wonderful. And Allison goes on and talks about how uh, if I ask questions and you answer them correctly, you can win one of these prizes. And a wall clock, a matching washer and dryer, or a brand new car. Uh, so Alan's like, well, hey, let me go first, okay? So we then have Alan that starts asking Madison questions like, who are you and where are you from? And like, begin from where you were born till when you just broke a bunch of TVs in that store. So Madison goes on and notices the don't walk sign on the crosswalk. And she notices how beautiful it is. And Alan's like, well, I've never noticed that before. But yeah, you're probably right. And so he asks her, are you from Cape Cod? Like, are you from another place? And it's like, I've got a cousin from there. So, like, are you American? And so the further and further he starts asking about like, well, like, how did you get from Cape Cod to New York? Like, why were you without any clothes? So Madison interrupts Alan because she hears music. She starts dancing, and she got on to state that she had never really heard music before, but on the television, she had noticed some dance fever on there, and so she learned how to dance via that. So Alan goes on and grabs Madison and starts walking off. I was like, oh yeah, we're gonna be late for something. Like just for how kind of weird Madison's kind of acting. And then he asks her, it's like, well, you've never heard music before? And so Madison goes right on to the streets while cars are driving. They crash into one another, and all of a sudden, then Madison notices a movie theater. So this is like a crazed cat that is just kind of going everywhere at this point. And this guy comes out of this car because he had to stop because Madison was in the road, and is arguing with Alan about like, hey, like keep your woman on a leash. And he's like, yeah, yeah, have a nice day. So both Alan and Madison make their way to a pizza joint because maybe that won't go on and lead them to any car accidents this day. So as further Madison is to start to quote things from the TV, Allison tells Madison, "It's like maybe to watch a little bit less TV at this point." So we have Ellen that ends up asking Madison how long she's going to be in town for, and she says 6 days. And he's like, 6 days? Is that it? Is that all? And Madison says, yeah, like if I stay any longer than that, then I won't be able to ever go back. Meaning that if she goes on and if she stays any longer on the land, then she'll never become a mermaid again. So that's why she's gone on to to say that she can only be on land for 6 days. And it's kind of weird because you would think with all the science experiments that they're going on with this girl, definitively, like, you would think 6 days would be far not enough time for Alan to go on and find her and get her. Yeah, like there would be no way that all this could be all taking place within 6 days of time. That makes no sense to me. We also have Madison that grabs this cup full of pencils, and Alan grabs it and gives it back to this blind man. And so we have Alan that is like, well, if your name isn't exactly something in English, we have to make something up. We have to come up with some English name. And Madison is like, well, English name? It's like, well, yeah, there's a million of them. And so he starts rattling off names. And so even they get to a point where they're just kind of randomly looking at stuff all around, and they just say the word Madison. And Madison's like, well, hey, I like Madison. And of course, that's what her name becomes. And I was like, well, hey, it's a good thing that we didn't be on the street of 149th Street because you would have been called that then. So we have Madison asking Alan if they're going to go back to his place. And Alan's like, you know what? I think I should probably actually go on and have you go to a hotel because, like, you know what? Like we don't really know one another. Like I want to give you your privacy. And so, but Alan is like, well, but we had been kind of doing some things over this afternoon that, like, well, like, would you mind staying with me? And she wants to stay with them. So the two of them are to go on and be sleeping. And Madison wakes up in the middle of the night to take a bath and has salt with her because salt water, so that way she can go on and technically become a mermaid here. So Madison is making this bath, and we of course have Alan that overhears her. At one point, there is to be quite a ruckus or quite a noise, and Alan wants to go on and assist Madison and hope that she's okay. And Madison, of course, wants nothing of it because, of course, she has her flipper out, and she gets out of the tub. She still has her flipper, and so she is trying to like use a towel to just kind of dampen her feet, so or her fin, so her fin will turn back to feet. So as Alan is kind of just afraid for Madison's safety, tries to push his way through the door, gets the door open, and is asking Madison if she's okay because he was just concerned. Uh, he was not at all like not wanting to have Madison just keep her privacy. He was just concerned. So Alan goes on to then find Madison, and it seems that she's okay, and she's back to having normal human legs. So Alan asks Madison why exactly she could not have gone on to open the door, and Madison just keeps saying that she was shy. And Alan's like, "You were shy?" Makes no sense. So the next thing we go on to see here is Kornbluth. Kornbluth is to be underwater, and his hose is being tampered with where he can't breathe. This is the spot where there's a chair on his air hose, and so he ends up getting upset with one of the crewmen on the ship because, of course, his chair is on the air hose. So Kornbluth is to go on and notice that one of the other crewmen. Both of these guys actually have names in the credits. I'm just gonna fast track this because I don't really care. Uh, Kornbluth ends up noticing that one of the crewmen has, and I believe his name is Junior, from what I briefly saw here. So he notices that this guy is reading this newspaper, and he really goes on to ream into him and insult him about this newspaper and the garbage it spews. But then coincidentally, the front page ends up being about this woman who is at the Statue of Liberty, and he realizes that that is the mermaid, and he's like, "Oh my god!" Like this girl does exist. So Allison and Madison, I completely just cram their names together. Alan and Madison are to go on and be at his place, and Madison is oddly crying. And Alan's like, "What's going on?" And Madison is like, "Well, I've just watched something very emotional." And Alan is looking at it. It's like, "Why are you crying?" And he's like, "It's Bonanza." And she's like, "Well, somebody just got shot and someone just died." And Alan's like, "This is acting. People get shot and die all the time. If anything, it's actually just kind of funny how often it happens. Like this guy's an actor, and you'll see him in next week's uh, other show somewhere, and so on and so forth. So, like this guy is still alive. Like he's just to go on and just have this role." So Madison realizes that she then could laugh about it, and after this getting to be explained to her. And so Alan wanted to do something nice for Madison, and he ends up giving her a gift. That's nice. And she ends up thinking that the box is a gift. And he's like, "No, like, there's something inside the box. You need to open it." So she opens it, and it ends up being of this kind of almost snow globe looking thing. And there's these two things inside of it that start to dance around. It's like, "Oh, that's nice." So which leads to then I think the exact same music being played by this live band, and Madison and Alan are listening to it. The next thing we see is both Alan and Madison making their way to this fountain that it seems that Alan really likes. He goes on to state that this fountain is a bit of comfort for him, and then he goes on to explain that in his youth he had gone on and jumped in the water, and there had been this mermaid there, and in Madison states like, "I remember," and Alan's like, what did you say?" And she's like, "Oh, what is it that you say in English? I understand." So she goes on and asks him if he ever got hurt from that, uh, and he doesn't. So, or he didn't. So we have at one point where Alan goes on to ask Madison if she wants to go home, and Madison says, "No, I have 5 days left," and he's like, "No, go to my home." She's like, "Oh." Just the idiocy of this character kind of could go on and make you groan throughout this entire film, but I get it. It's always the fish out of water story. Literally, I have to say that. So, in this case, anyways, so I think that's the only thing that could, like, I think the stupidity of this character kind of hurts this movie over time, but like I haven't seen the full part of this movie. Like if I probably got on and seen this movie like a handful of times, it would hugely affect my grading of this film. But luckily, I'd kind of gone on and only seen it a few certain times here. So both Freddie and Alan are talking as they made their way into seemingly this locker room because they're going to go on and they're going to play squash together. And Freddie has some news that the two of them are going to go on and they're going to uh, be at this dinner where they're going to be in close proximity with uh, with eyesight of seeing the president of the United States. And Freddie says that this dinner is going to be a huge thing, and like they can be bumping shoulder to shoulder with maybe some people that can kind of bring some good business into their company. But I'm like, yeah, this is not really going to do much of anything. And plus, they also have to kind of set this up so that way uh, they can much more so better understand why is it that Kornbluth is to be stopped the way he does by the later half of this movie. Because people assume that Kornbluth is to be some assassin for the president, but that's not to be true. Kornbluth is going on and having this water apparatus of this backpack and this water um, uh, thing to spout out, so that way this water hose is spat out so he can reveal Madison being a mermaid. So, but back to what's going on here. The two of them are talking by these lockers, and Freddy is saying how Alan had said before, um, something in here is nothing, and I'll never find love, and and Freddy knows that Alan is in love right now, and Freddy wants Alan to just admit it, and Alan won't. So uh, Freddy then goes on and takes Alan over the shoulder, and it's to kind of eye gouge him, or is like, "Come on, admit it, come on," and and Alan's like, "Never," and so they end up doing this move called the Bone Crusher, and they kind of do this weird, uh, goofy slam of a move, and so the next thing they go on and they do is they play a thing of squash, and they've supposedly only been playing for 5 full minutes. Uh, we consistently have Freddy who ends up getting like hit in the chest with the ball, or he just is to be kind of quickly gassed out, which is understandable. Yeah, like uh, understandable between any of them. Like I would probably go on and probably think that squash is probably very exhausting, and I probably would know how long I've been playing it. Uh, Plus, I've never gone on and played squash, and like I don't know, I've never really been much of a tennis person because I know I would smack the out of the ball, and then I'm like, I don't want to go and get it. I think we all have that kind of frame of mind where like everybody would want to go on and play tennis or basketball or baseball or any kind of sport with a ball, but then eventually no one wants to go on and deal with the repercussions of if you play with the ball too hard that you have to go on and you have to retrieve it because that ends up getting really annoying. um String with the cup. Anyways, so we have Freddie going on and talking further about the relationship that Alan's having, where Freddie goes on and says to Alan, it's like, well, hey, if you're not in love with this girl, if anything, there has to be these things that she's doing that are just driving you crazy also. And Alan says to Freddie, it's like, well, like this girl learned like the English language within an afternoon of watching television. And Freddie's like, well, she could have probably spoken English already. And it's like she was probably shocked about being arrested earlier. No, that's probably why she didn't talk that much. And Alan's like, well, like, yeah, but that doesn't also have it not be a thing that she had showed up naked in a public place. And Freddie's like, well, if she's a free spirit, I'm a free spirit. It's completely okay. And uh, so Freddie kind of rationalizes that maybe she's a channel swimmer and she had to deal with all the sharks and everything and Coast Guard and minefields and everything to make her way to shore. And then Alan brings up the whole like uh, that Madison is talk about the moon stuff, and she broke all those TVs, obviously. And Freddie goes on and says, like, well, you know what? Like, when I was in love, there was some minor fiascos that I just kind of put up with. And Alan goes on to state that Freddie had brought a date to his own wedding, and so we go on and they get back to doing squash. We have Freddie that tells Alan, hey, like, you go on, you hold my beer, and that'll be your handicap. And so let's go on and let's play. Uh, so I think, yeah, Freddie goes on and he hits the ball and immediately comes flying right back at him, and he falls over, and they kind of just stop everything. So we go on to have Corbin Bluth, who is to be talking into this room full of scientists. One of them is to be Dr. Ross, who's to kind of be pointing the finger at Kornbluth here, as well as a number of these other scientists. So the scientists are kind of upset about how Kornbluth had wanted them all to come there for this very important meeting, for him to explain that he had gone on to see a mermaid, and they're like, well, hey, you need to come up with something way more important than something like this, some comic book nonsense. And so all these scientists go on and leave. So Alan makes his way back to his place, and Madison had gotten a gift for Alan. And so they go into the room and they find out that the fountain is there in the room. I'm like, this is huge to be in a room like it's heavy. Like, how is this fitting in a room like this? This makes no effing sense. And so Alan has to go on and ask Madison how exactly that she was able to afford getting this fountain in here, as well as also this thing is freaking huge anyways. So Madison goes on to kind of display her neck bare, and Alan realizes that Madison had sold her necklace to be able to afford this fountain. And so here is where the two of them finally say their I love yous, and it's nice. It's so sweet. So Kornbluth is going on and talking to one of the scientists, and here's where we get the part where this scientist is telling Kornbluth, like, man, you had so much potential when you were young, when you came here. And he was like, yeah, I was 12. And it's like, yeah, you were a schmuck. Look what you've become. Uh, there's mermaids in New York, you say. Uh, so Kornbluth is to tell this scientist that, yeah, like, this scientist had gone on to tell him when he was a kid of that there were sightings of mermaids existing. And the scientist is telling Kornbluth, it's like, well, yeah, that's what I told you as a kid. And so the scientist tells Kornbluth, it's like, well, and Kornbluth goes on and tells this scientist, he's like, well, hey, I'm going to prove to you that there is one. And he's like, how are you going to go on and exactly do that? Like, are you going to get her wet so everybody sees that she has fins? And Kornbluth is like, that actually does sound like a good idea. So Kornbluth goes on and follows Alan and Madison around, spots them. So Kornbluth has in his car 2 buckets of water. Kornbluth is chasing after Madison, hoping to throw this water on her to then have this camera to take pictures of her. So Kornbluth goes on and finds what he believes is Madison, throws this bucket of water, and finds another woman that looks like Madison instead. This woman ends up getting water on her. The guy that's with her ends up getting so upset as Kornbluth had gone on to put this camera to his face, and the guy ends up punching Kornbluth out. You can kind of see him like grabbing the camera there. So we have Madison, we have Alan, they're at dinner together, and we have at one point where Alan is going on and having not much of anything to do, that he just has a spoon and he accidentally like flings the spoon and it spats onto this frame next to this couple. So here's where Alan goes on and asks Madison if she really needs to leave the country. And she's like, well, I do. And he's like, no, you don't. And so Alan goes in and talks about immigration laws and that he's willing to let her work in his his factory to get a work visa, or maybe she can go on and get married like to an American, and they'll have to let you stay then. And then like some waiters come to kind of distract them, and he's like, oh well, we'll just kind of talk about that later when we're alone. So the food comes, the lobster is there, and we have Madison that rips into this thing, and everybody's kind of noticing that Allison is kind of diving into this thing, and Allison or or Alan goes on and turns to people like, "Yeah, she's really hungry. Yeah, you know, long day." So they're now going ice skating together, and here's the point where the two of them kind of get off to the side. They go to this bench, and here's where Alan revisits the whole like getting married thing, and he goes on and pops the question to Madison's like, "Well, will you marry me?" And Madison says no, and it's like, "No, what do you mean no? You don't want to think about it, like kick it around?" And she's like, "I can't." And he's like, "Well, why?" And it's like, "I can't tell you why." And he's like, "Oh yeah, because your deep down secret that you just can't tell me." Oh boy. Like, and so he's like, "You know what? I don't really care what your secret is. Like, are you already married? Like, are you a man? Like, are you dying?" Like, whatever it is, I don't care. You can tell me. Like, and so she's like, well, I only have 3 days. Please make them wonderful. And then he's like, okay. So the two of them make their way back on to the skating rink and they start to continue to skate. And Alan starts looking at this couple that have been at the skating rink for 40 years. And the further and further he's looking around here, the more upset he's obviously getting. And so Madison ends up going on to just kind of stating how like it's very weird for her to see an ice rink like this because where she comes from, ice never really gets cold. And here's where Alan starts chiming in. It's like, well, yeah, where is the place that you come from? And so he starts arguing with her, and it's really just because she's never really opened up to him. And Madison is starting to notice Alan's voice changing. It's like, well, it's called sarcasm and this and that. Like, because he's really just trying to figure out a way to just be upset here. The more upset that Alan's getting, the more Madison is to want to just escape here. So, as Alan chases after Madison, the guy who's for the ice skate rentals is realizing, hey, this guy's trying to get out of here with these skates. So he drops them, grabs them, and tries to get the skates off. And then Alan is now desperately trying to find Madison. He's looking everywhere for her. So Madison is underneath this bridge, and she is very tempted to make her way back onto the water. And we have Alan that is to go on and just be standing somewhere, and Madison finds Alan. So Madison tells Alan yes, that she's willing to marry him. The two of them hug, and Alan goes in this whole thing about like, well, hey, if we go on and we get our blood test back, we can go on and get married. What does a blood test have to do with getting married? That just seems weird. Uh, but then also you would think they would have to have some kind of like identification or something that states who they are, birth certificate. Like this girl won't have any of that. How can they go on and get a marriage license? I don't know. That's very weird to me. But whatever, I guess. So Madison goes on to tell Alan that she finally has to break it to him and tell him everything. And Alan is so going off about the whole blood test thing, but no pressure, but and so like the further and further Alan talks to Madison, that there's a possibility that they can just get married even quicker than just kind of getting a marriage license and so on and so forth, all those loopholes and what have you. So as they make their way into this elevator, Kornbluth is to notice them. And so he makes his way up these stairs and gets this hose, thinking that as soon as this elevator opens, he's going to go on and find both Madison and both Alan, spray them with his hose, reveal that this is to be this mermaid and victories to be had this day, only to go on and have this elevator open to then go on and see what is, I guess, the same exact couple, or maybe the woman is different from before. And oh, also, Kornbluth at this point had broken his hand, or had his hand broken, so he's in a cast. So the guy who, of course, is to be adjacent to Kornbluth is very upset, calling him an SOB, and is going to beat him up even more because the both of them are soaked with water now. So Alan and Madison make their way to this elevator and or through this elevator, and Kornbluth is making his way down the stairs with this hose wrapped around him. So Madison and Alan are now to have made their way to this presidential dinner banquet thing. I have no idea what it actually was. So the two of them are going on and they're talking here, and we already have Alan, who it seems is having some baby fever, as he's already going on and talking about how they can have kids. And he's like, boy, girl, and she's like, what kind? Assuming that, I guess it's like, well, hey, like, are they going to be mermaid, merman, or human? Uh, but anyways, uh, I guess that's kind of the joke, that considering Alan doesn't know that they're mermaid. Yeah. So Alan goes on and spouts out to everybody that they're getting married tonight, because again, it's a rush to get married, it seems, and they're just really ramping up this timetable. So there's be a number of chefs in this back room kind of making all this food. And there's to be this kind of head waiter guy who notices Kornbluth, and he has now this neck brace and this broken arm. This head waiter goes on and notices Kornbluth and is like, "Why are you even here?" It's like, "Is your arm broken?" He's like, "Yeah, it's been broken in 16 places." And the guy asks him, "It's like, why are you even here?" It's like, "Well, the union sent me." It's like, all right, well, like the guy completely forgets everything because he notices that the president is here. And so while the cooks are continuing to cook here, we go on to then have Kornbluth, who is to get his seemingly water backpack apparatus to be slung over his body so he can go on and spray, hopefully, Madison finally with this water as he goes on to test that the water is spraying out of this thing before he goes out there to try and attack Madison with this hose that he is to go on and have within him, or with him. So the president goes on and makes these certain speeches from time to time, talking about how he's a corn-fed Kansas boy, and that these people are the big apple of his eye. I guess this has to be a New York thing to say here. So we have Kornbluth that obviously has this huge uh like hump that everyone is noticing because it sticks out like a horrible sore thumb. And the Secret Service are going out like alert table 5, like intercept bus boy with suspicious hump. Yeah, the bus boy. So Secret Service are scrambling onto Kornbluth, and they ask him like, "Sir, I'd like to have a word with you." And he's like, "About what?" And Kornbluth is saying this has nothing to do with the president. So Kornbluth is getting escorted out of the building as the president is saying, it's like, well, he must not have liked the dinner costs, and ba-doom. So Kornbluth is now outside. They notice they've torn off this guy's equipment, and there's all these news reporters that are going on, and they're hitting cameras. Kornbluth is out there and very upset, obviously. And he's like, "I want to talk to the press. I want to talk to the press." So Madison is now pushing Ellen that she wants to tell her secret, and Alan is telling Madison, "So right now, really? Like, okay, great." And Alan is like, "Well, I don't think we should do it here. Like, if anything, I think we should leave." And that's wherein lies the problem here. So Kornbluth is still outside. Alan and Madison are leaving, and Alan turns and he sees Kornbluth. He's like, "Hey, I know that guy. Like, I saw him on Cape Cod. Like, he's that crazy guy." So the next thing we see is Kornbluth grabbing his hose from his backpack attachment, running to make his way to Madison, starts spraying both Madison and both Alan with this hose. And Madison falls. That's how powerful this water was, it seems. Coming from this like thing that he was spraying out there doesn't quite make sense. But regardless, Madison was to fall because her legs were to become fins, so that's why she fell. So Kornbluth turns to everybody, stating that he was right, as now Madison now has fins. She's a mermaid, everybody. Delicious mermaid, but mermaid nonetheless. She's no different than anyone else. So, all of a sudden, all the camera people are swarming on Madison, and they start asking her questions. Who is she? Da 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 da. Everybody, I think, completely gets about Kornbluth, even though some of the Secret Service are still grabbing him. And Alan is trying to make his way back to Madison, but a Secret Service grabs him, as well as also another Secret Service grabs Madison. So the next thing we see is Dr. Ross making his way to this laboratory where Alan's character is in this huge tank. And the doctors are assuming that Alan is a merman. And so they put him in water thinking that he's going to turn into one as well, which he doesn't. So Dr. Ross turns to his other doctor and tells her, it's like, well, maybe he'll go on and become a merman if he interacts with the mermaid. So they go on and they bring in Madison in the tank with him. And Madison asks Alan, it's like, well, like, I guess they must have assumed that you might have been one also. And Madison also tells Alan, it's like, you said whatever my secret was, you'd understand. And Alan tells Madison's like, I know. Just like, but like, yeah, like, it would probably, like, at first, it would probably weird anybody out, but it's just something to kind of just get used to. Just like, oh, well, I just didn't know. So it's like finding out that your significant other is a vampire or a werewolf or like there's something to just kind of get used to that. And then also something like that could kill you. But anyways, uh, Dr. Ross goes on and states like, well, yeah, I don't think that this guy has to be at all this merman. So if anything, we'll just concentrate on her because she obviously is one. So Alan ends up getting dumped off to the side of the road somewhere, and we have a bunch of news that swarm all over him and start asking him questions and about them, like, well, hey, did you actually make love with her? Like, did she eat worms and all these other things? Freddy comes out of the shadows and is grabbing Alan and kind of pulling him away here. He goes on and asks if any of these news outlets are from Penthouse Forum, and they all say no. So he's like, all right, well, like, then, like, no questions, anybody. So both Alan and Freddy make their way back to their offices, and Alan's secretary says that he has like hundreds or thousands of messages, and starts rattling them all off that they're all coming from all these news stations. So, and Ripley's Believe It or Not or anything, everything like that. So, Alan goes into his office to talk to Freddy, and the one thing that really sticks out here is that he says like, uh, all my life I've been waiting for someone, and when I find her, she's a fish. Yeah, well, like what is that stupid thing that they say when people can't find anybody. There are always more fish in the sea. That's the stupidest thing. I always hate that kind of crap because everyone have those stupid analogies when you're single and like you're thinking that like that people are just gonna like fall out of the sky for you and it's not gonna happen that way. If anything, it just takes a load of work, and even that, like that, doesn't really work out to where it's just like one tiny little, small little detail of like of you not going on and saying the right thing, or or getting to a point where you're not acting quick enough, or what, yeah, or really just you going on and being like, yeah, there's no way I'm gonna end up um having this all happen because I'm so used to not having it happen. But anyways, just being just very, very honest, more so than I probably should. So uh he goes on, like Alan continues here, like, well, I didn't expect it to be perfect, but for God's sakes, it's usually human. Every day people meet and they fall in love. Uh, and look what I got. And Freddy's like, well, yeah, look what you got. Like, uh, at some point, Freddy goes on and says here, uh, people fall in love every day. Yeah, that's a crock. It doesn't work for everybody, and also like you can kind of tell the way Freddy's kind of going on here. It's like this movie is also to kind of remind me of like the Jack Black movie, like Shallow Hal. I kind of said I probably should have said that way earlier, but it kind of feels like that in a lot of ways if you think about it. Uh, but if anything, Freddy's to go on and say like, do you realize how happy you were with her when you weren't driving yourself crazy every day? Come on. Uh, some people will never be that happy. I'll never be that happy. So yeah, like it was really interesting to see that, like considering how Freddy is to go on and be chasing skirts consistently and never really finding anybody, whereas Alan is to go on and firmly find the one, and Alan is just kind of letting this slip through his fingers just because of a simple thing like mermaid. Come on, Alan. Come on. So we have Kornbluth that is to go on after a certain time has been passing here, and it's to realize how pale it seems that the mermaid is starting to get here. And so Kornbluth ends up telling Dr. Ross here, it's like, do you notice that she's starting to get a little pale? And the doctor is like, well, it's all good days of work. Well, like, we'll start all our internal examinations. And Kornbluth is like, what? Internal examinations? And they're like, yeah, we want to test her reproductive organs. We want to go on and like, they basically want to go on and dissect her, and they want to consider everything. And Kornbluth wants like Kornbluth is starting to realize like, oh no, like I don't want to. I did like I just wanted to prove this. I didn't want her to go on and be experimented on the way she's going. And plus, also like Kornbluth ends up telling Alan that he really is a nice guy. If he really had friends, like they would go on and tell him he's a nice guy. So like we start to see Kornbluth here is to realize that he doesn't want to hurt this girl, and And plus, also considering she's starting to look sickly, like he wants to actually help her. He's kind of turning things around. This Dr. Ross is just seeing dollar signs in this girl, and they're going to do everything they can to just rip this girl apart. So, as well as also Dr. Roth is going on to push away Kornbluth here to say it's like, oh yeah, you did discover this girl, but you're not going to be a member of this team. And so Dr. Roth is pushing Kornbluth to go on and find some unicorn or some other thing. So Kornbluth looking at the tank here, this girl is like, all right, well, like there's nothing more I can do here because yeah, he was kind of just shunned out. So Alan makes his way back to just look at his fountain, and so now Kornbluth is at this dentist because he had messed up he cracked one of his tooth because he had gotten beat up so much that yeah he ended up ruining one of his teeth. So the doctor is going on to give Kornbluth painkillers to numb the pain um, of this dental surgery that they're going to go on and do here. And all of a sudden, Alan seemingly is miraculously being able to find where Kornbluth is at this dentist's office and confronts him. And Alan wants to know where Madison is. He had tried to call all these politicians, and he had he had been uh, like cussing them out and blah 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 blah. So and Alan kind of is very upset with Kornbluth at this point because he's ruined his life. And here's where Kornbluth is like, well, I didn't mean to. I just wanted to prove that I wasn't crazy. And here's where he goes on and he says that he's a man of science and he's a nice guy and da 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 da. So Alan is to go on and say like no one can even let me go and see her, and Kornbluth is like, well, I can. So Kornbluth takes Alan and Freddy to make their way to see Madison. So what happens here is Kornbluth makes his way to these military men and they stop him. And Kornbluth explains to this military guy that he is here with the two Swedes. And so we have this officer that goes on to say, like, oh, well, I know Swedish. And so he starts talking to them in Swedish. Hi, like, how was your trip? How's your trip been so far? And the two of them go, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So the soldier is kind of taken like, no, they didn't exactly answer what I said here. So we then have the soldier that goes on and stops them again, like, and he speaks Swedish again, like, oh, what are two Swedish scientists doing so far from Sweden? And all of a sudden, Freddy, like, kind of starts ripping out some Swedish words where he's like, hey, babe, I got a 12-inch penis. He goes on to say these words afterwards because Alan asks Freddy, "Hey, how exactly have you gone on to be able to know Swedish?" And Freddy had said that he'd gone on and seen so many adult films like 400 to 500 times that something just sticks in there. So that was a bit of fun that they stated there. So Kornbluth goes through the military soldiers and or through the camouflage soldier that is be at the door trying to stop them from getting any further. And Kornbluth kind of makes a joke here, like, well, what do you think we're trying to do? Steal this mermaid? Ha 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 ha. Like, come on. And so the three men come in, Allison and I keep going with the Allison thing. Alan and Madison reunite here. They kiss. And Alan ends up asking Madison, is this the big secret that you've been keeping? And that you're just a mermaid, or is there anything else? And Madison is like, no, that's it. And Madison tells Alan, hey, don't feel guilty. And Alan's like, guilty about what? And Madison says, like, well, not for not loving me anymore. And Alan's like, well, hey, you know me the whole time, like, that we've been together. Like, you always know how I'm feeling. Like, can't you tell that I love you now? So the next thing we see is that Kornbluth and Alan are rushing with this body, and they say that the mermaid had these lasers that came out of their eyes. It's like, oh my god, how this happened, I have no idea. And so Kornbluth is telling this soldier, it's like, hey, like, don't worry, I'll come back soon with nuclear weapons. I'm like, nuclear weapons? But, like, I just found this bit just kind of very funny here, and we obviously know what's going on. They're running out there with the mermaid, and they're getting in the car, and they're running off. We have Dr. Ross that comes in with the two Swedes, and the soldier's like, wait a minute, like, Kornbluth is coming in with these two other Swedes. I'm like, there's something afoot going on here. So Dr. Ross makes his way into the laboratory to come to find that instead of there being the mermaid, there's to be Freddy instead. And he's going on and he has this kind of fish pole. He's like, come on, guys, the water's fine. And Dr. Ross goes on and tells the soldier, arrest him and get that mermaid back. So there's going to be a helicopter that is flying by that is going on to try and spot the blue BMW that that it seems Alan is driving in. So Alan and Kornblue and Madison have thought that they've kind of escaped, that they've gotten away with this so easily. And then all of a sudden there's this military vehicle that is going on and chasing after them. So this whole chase starts to occur here. And so, because at first, like, it seems that Alan's car is kind of stuck in traffic. These soldiers are running to get to Alan's car, and then Alan just kind of curves off and just is driving all over the place, even sidewalks and whatever, just get out of here. So the military vehicle is chasing after them, and so this chase is occurring here. So Kornbluth goes on and tells them, hey, stop the car. I'm going to be in front of the road to distract them and, like, and buy you guys some time. And so Madison goes on and kisses Kornbluth, and Kornbluth tells Madison that he's the one that caused all this. So now he has to go on and finish it. So Kornbluth goes in the middle of the road and is to hold a sign up of his hand that says stop. And yeah, the military is just driving on by, and Kornbluth just gets to a point where he's like, I'm going to get run over if these yeah, they're not going to stop for me. So Kornbluth rolls out of the way and he falls into this this hole in the side of the road. And he's like, man, I've had a hell of a week. or no, he's like, what a week I've been having. That's what he's been saying for how many times he's gotten beat up at this point. So the military is going on to find that there's a taxi in their way, and they end up rolling over a taxi to continue to drive here. We finally have Alan and Madison, and they're at a point where Madison can go on and jump into this water, and the two of them had a bit of dialogue here, and they said, I was ready to stay with you forever, and it's like, well, yeah, but they know who you are, and they won't leave you alone. Uh, and Madison tells Alan, it's like, well, I will never be able to come back to you, and Alan's like, well, I wish I can go with you, and Madison's like, well, you can. Like, if anything, like, even though you're human, like, if anything, if you're with me, like, I can help you kind of breathe underwater. And so we go on to have Alan, who's like, well, yeah, that's great, that's great. And so Alan's like, well, yeah, I can go with you, and then I can visit Freddy for Christmas. And Madison's like, yeah, you can't come back. You can't do that. And Alan's like, oh, shit. So Freddy is kind of like, oh, I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I can give up everything. And Madison's like, well, I understand. They kiss. The military is going on, and they're bashing their way through this fence to make it to both Madison and Alan. Helicopters flying by. So Alan turns to Madison and tells her, you have to go. And he tells her he loves her. So Madison jumps into the water, and Alan screams to the military, leave her alone, leave her alone. Alan looks at Madison and realizes that he cannot go on without her. So he then too jumps into the water and realizes he can't swim. Scuba divers are in the water. So Alan almost starts to drown in the water. Madison gets back to Alan, gives him a way to breathe, and Alan seemingly is back to normal now. Scuba divers start to surround both Madison and Alan. Alan and Madison start to attack the scuba divers. They bite them in the leg. Alan bites them in the leg. Uh, Madison uses her fins and just kind of fights them and takes them down. So the last thing we see here as the credits start to roll, as the two of them are swimming through the water. And that's how we wrap up this movie. Happy ending. So I'm going to get out of here so I can upload this. Wow, that took forever to say all this. But anyways, regardless, I knew that this was going to take a lengthy amount of thing to talk about anyways, even though I try to brush through it. There was a lot of complex things to talk about here, and also I'm just severely long-winded when I talk about every one of these. Whatever. Logically, people can go on and check out this film, and there's another review in the books, so that's great. I'm kind of like I'm hoping that there might be a thing that might ping into specifically after reviewing this. Like I'm hoping like Lady of the Water will go on and be a thing that I could know whether or not it's to be an interest to people. Maybe I'll go on and I'll check that movie out again at some point. It'll be good to have that thing on the list to just kind of talk about at some point. So I'm thinking about doing that. I probably should have talked about future reviews, but I feel like I've gone on and said all of those and all my other things. Plus, also, there has been some videos that have been doing surprisingly well lately. So I'm just kind of just like, all right, well, like, if anything, I can just kind of experiment now to just find some other good uh, things that may go on and do quasi exist. I'm not thinking it's gonna go on and make what other more successful things have made, but like I can just be happy that things are getting views whatsoever. Because there was a blip of time there where I was just like, "Ooh, like this has gone on to really just uh, really go downhill." But it feels like there is potential for upswing right now, so I'm just so grateful for those people who decide to just watch these videos or rewatch them because they're kind of waiting for when I come back. Because like logically, I'm kind of doing these every other day now, but at least I'm still consistently coming back to them. For those of you that do not know, every other day I'm kind of balancing both working out and then doing these reviews. So that's the reason why my schedule is the way to be where it is, regardless of new releases, regardless of whatever. Like I'm just kind of sticking to this process of like, well, I'm hoping I'm consistently to stay very consistently, at least like having a pattern to where people can seem that they quasi know when I'm going to review something, uh, based on just kind of a pattern of things. So yeah, so I'm just trying to stay consistent, even though knowing that like one sick day or something happening will probably f with that. Um, but yeah, but I hope to go on and just keep delivering some interesting movies, probably movies, and maybe every once in a while I'll do a show. Like I'm interested in doing the Aquaman pilot and other things. I hope to go on and probably still do the Frankenstein 1930s film. That probably will end up being the next thing on the list of things to do still. The Aquaman pilot will be probably a next thing to do still. Uh, Other than that, like I kind of have a small portion of stuff that I'm still kicking around. But every day I just keep coming to find as I experiment, like this movie, that movie, and so on and so forth. So everything just kind of continues to just get in the way, or it's just kind of based on whatever I feel that day is kind of what I actually do, what I put out, and uh, and I love variety. I don't like to go on and I don't like to try to linger to things too much. So that's probably why I've kind of really had a huge stall of doing anything show related, just because I like the variety. And I feel like if I am to do a show, like I'd have to do like a whole season in one video or something along those lines. And I'm just like, I don't want to do that kind of effort. But again, I'm doing an almost 2.5 hour video of one movie, so that's a stupid idea. But regardless, I felt that this was worth it. I like this film, so hopefully everyone will go on and watch this review however you want to. The further and further I'm talking here, feels like I'm getting a little bit of a some in my throat. So, bye everybody. Bye everybody.